Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Martin Scorsese's The Departed in 2006. Here it is on Blu-ray, a rewatch once again tonight, and yeah, I've been doing quite a few Scorsese reviews recently. He's one of my absolute favourite directors, and The Departed is an interesting film. I've seen it probably about more than 10 times now, actually, at least. And yeah, it's quite a lot of the time, especially now. It appears on a lot of lists of overrated films, unfortunately for me, and I don't agree with that. It got, of course, it was the first one that got his Oscar for Best Director, Scorsese. Of course, many people have said that why did he win it for this film? So many other better films that he's made, and yes, of course, there's films where that he made that are better than this before that. But I think this is one of his best films, and it's kind of you have to look at a lot of the time what films he was up against on them particular years. That it's kind of understandable at times. I think definitely though, Taxi Driver would for me definitely be the best film of 1976. I think he should have he should have definitely won for that. But when you look at 1980. I think 1980 Empire Strikes Back was the best film of the year. But he's always up against great stuff, and I just guess it happens that The Departed, got it, and absolutely stunning film. But it does get a lot of hate nowadays, and people, a lot of people call it overrated. It won 4 Oscars, of course, and yeah, it's very acclaimed. IMDb, it's got 8.5 and all this sort of stuff. Massive ensemble cast, but at the same time, many critics called it, his return to form, his best film since Goodfellas. I'm not going to say if I agree with that or not. I'm not going to spoil that. But yes, The Departed for me is a masterpiece. Just get it out of the way. It's one of these films. I'm not going to be reviewing, of course, for this month of a favourite film every day. This is on my favourite films list, and yeah, it's just an absolutely stunning film. Set in Boston, and of course, kind of follows this Irish mob boss of Frank Costello, and he's kind of this kind of state trooper Billy Costigan gets kind of sent in by the police to kind of go undercover and get into the kind of into the criminal organisation of Frank Costello. While as well, Frank Costello has actually sent in Matt Damon, who plays Sullivan, and he kind of sends him in there to kind of be a mole within the detectives and everything, and so it's basically a switch, and eventually when it gets to a certain point in the film, they kind of they're trying to hunt each other down, discover who is actually the one undercover. The two of them kind of go up against each other without actually seeing each other for a long time, and eventually things do happen where they do actually meet, and it all goes from there, and really it's very complex and intricate plot. Of course it is, you have to mention, it is basically a remake of Infernal Affairs. I've not seen that film, but yeah, it is a remake of that, and of course it got the Oscar for adapted screenplay because it is based off of that. But most people do say that it's better than that, and I probably will agree. I don't imagine it being better than this, because I think this is a stunning film. And the cast in this film, something else. You've got not just Leonardo DiCaprio, who's one of the for me best modern actors for sure of all time, and this is it's his third collaboration with Scorsese after The Aviator and then previously Gangs of New York. So yeah, it's just a third collaboration, and Leonardo DiCaprio is one of the greatest actors working today, and I just absolutely love him, really, in everything I've seen him in. And just a stunning actor. I think his best performances, Django Unchained, Wolf of Wall Street, a couple of others. Gangs of New York is actually one of his best performances as well. He gets a lot of hate for that. I'll be reviewing that, maybe quite soon actually. I can't wait to talk about that. And yes, it's also got, of course, Matt Damon, who is absolutely amazing as well. Alec Baldwin again, one of the kind of best sort of actors who plays a lot of side characters, you know, and kind of he's great, and he's been great in the Mission Impossible films recently. You know, you've got Martin Sheen, who's one of the finest actors. You know, when he is in a film, you know, a big film, he's one of the finest. You know, Badlands, Apocalypse Now, and he's got just got a massive cast. You know, Jack Nicholson, of course, is kind of the you know the outrageous kind of explosive mob boss in the film, Irish mob boss, and just a stunning cast. Mark Wahlberg, even, you know, one of his few performances is actually great. You know, in this film, I think he's absolutely brilliant in the film. You know, because he's not. You know, I don't think he's overall been in a lot of films where he's great. You know, and he's had some bad performances, given some bad stuff, and at times it's very clear that he doesn't quite put the effort in there. But you know, when he is on form, he is brilliant. Boogie Nights especially. But yeah, the cast are wonderful. I think the emotion and the passion that's put into this film by Scorsese, of course, as well. Mainly, it's stunning. I think definitely one of his best films. You know, the script is wonderful as well. Of course, you know, it's a stunning script. Of course, it takes from Infernal Affairs, but you know, the way that this film is told visually is very unique, and the typical kind of Scorsese, you know, just clear storytelling visually, and just so involving. And the way this film has been edited is really perfection. Film and screenmaker once again working with Scorsese here. You know, many collaborations over the years, and it's just stunning. It's so sharp. You know, just every frame as well. It's beautifully shot. But the way it's been edited is very fast paced, very energetic. Again, at times used for an effect where, you know, the kind of twists and everything as well. You know, some of the deaths in the film play a lot to the actual way it's been. The timing of the editing, you know, it's key here. Really something else. And Howard Shore would compose the actual score for the film. It's a wonderful score. I think it really just you get the feel of the kind of Boston, and the history as well of just America and everything, and you know, the kind of Irish roots and everything like that. It's really great. You know, perfect for the film, and just the songs that's been used and injected by Scorsese. Of course, it's another one that features the Rolling Stones music. I think he uses "Give Me Shelter" about 4 different times in the film. Who can blame him? Such a great song. But yeah, it's quite funny. You know, he uses it quite a lot, and just the whole soundtrack is wonderful. And yeah, you know, it's massive soundtrack. So well used. Massive cast. All of them are really perfect in all the roles. Vera Farmiga is great as well, and she kind of plays the psychiatrist. You know, that is very much you know, involved in the two main undercover guys. You know, Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio, and you know, slowly over the film, as the film goes on, two relationships kind of got a triangle going on, but of course, for the most of the film, they don't actually know what's going on between, you know, that sort of thing, and apart from her, of course. But yeah, no, it's wonderfully crafted, and you know, it just gets better and better. This film, it really does. When I first saw it, you know, it was along with, you know, maybe a bit later than when I saw Goodfellas and stuff. It was probably about 13, something like that. But you know, it was just, I'd seen just, you know, Goodfellas, Taxi Driver, and all that sort of stuff, and then I watched this, and once again, just absolutely loved it. Another Scorsese that I, you know, really was obsessed with. I just love Scorsese films. You know, when he's at his best. There's now, you know, after seeing 13, I think I've seen now. There's 2 films that I do not like of his, but you know, it's fine. You know, it's always just great to see something from him. You know, and massive respect, of course. You know, I never get angry really at all or anything, and you know, he's just overall one of the best filmmakers. But The Departed is really unique as well. It's not just a gangster film. You know, it's quite similar at times to Mean Streets. You know, and stuff actually. And yes, Goodfellas. Not too much Casino, but yeah, no, it's kind of this gangster stuff, but with a twist, and it is also a very intense thriller, much more so than any of his other, you know, kind of gangster films. And you know, it just has this very intricate plot. You know, I'm not going to get into the plot too much. You know, it's really kind of, first of all, too hard to kind of explain fully, but you know, and also, you know, it wouldn't do it justice. You know, it's about how the film, it affects all these characters and everything, and how the narrative, it goes through that kind in the narrative sense. I love films. I mainly love films with that are character focused, more so than plot focused. But this one kind of balances out both perfectly, and even more emphasis on the characters. It's kind of how this kind of lifestyle and everything affects these two characters, and they're kind of mirror narratives, at opposite ends and stuff, and it's just so compelling. These two characters, the main characters of Leonardo, Matt Damon. DiCaprio is the one that's kind of more kind of working class, you could say, and the one that kind of reveals more and stuff. And he's a much more interesting character for me, and it's just better performance as well. And then you've got Matt Damon, who kind of really he hides everything from everyone for the most part throughout the entire film. And it's really, really interesting, the opposites, but also the similarities these two have, and they're both kind of undercover in different ways, in a sense, and just the way that it's just so interesting, the two arcs that go throughout the film, the way that it intertwines as well. You you kind of get that effect throughout where they do meet up even early on. There's a moment where DiCaprio's character is just sitting down, and Matt Damon just walk through, and didn't quite look at each other, and it just kind of sets up little moments that happen throughout the rest of the film, and it's geniusly done in that way. It's so masterfully constructed, like a puzzle, and I just love the way it's just Scorsese again, knowing how to tell a story, of a masterful degree, visually, and of course just through many other different techniques, the sound design and everything, and the script, of course, as well, is just wonderful. I love the script, and I will check out Infernal Affairs as well at some point. But it's just the way it's told. It could have been convoluted. It could have been a bit. It's a lot to tackle. In that sense. But Scorsese, very, very clear. Always places all the different things throughout that you can pick up on, and then piece together little things, and it has like effect on you where you you look back to certain things and you realise how that happened and everything like that, and it's just genius. So many different things involved, but they all come together perfectly at the end. Probably one of the best endings of the 2000s, of the century, really, full stop. Actually, just the way it comes together. Again, to do that editing, but the actual ending sequences. The first time I saw it, I was like, wow. There was none of this spoilers really when I first saw it, and just generally, I don't really look at online. I try not to look at spoilers anyway now, but back then it was less so, and I was just like, wow, I don't believe they actually done that, and every time I rewatch it, it's still kind of the same effect, and of course as well, because different things of course happen to different characters, but you're invested so much in them. It's really, really meaningful. This one, although it is, it's a very, very high-paced thriller and everything. Scorsese really puts the care into the characters, and some of these characters, like Frank Costello, played by Jack Nicholson, some of the most memorable characters in a Scorsese film. He is just amazing, Jack Nicholson, in this film. Performance is something else. Jack Nicholson is one of my favourite actors of all time, definitely my top 10, and actually, he probably is my favourite actor that's in this film, and he is so good, and a lot of twists as well that happen with him, and just such a, it could have been a bit out of control, the performance, but Jack Nicholson knows how to do over the top. Let's face it, it is. His performances a lot of time are over the top, but not in a bad way at all, because he just knows how to do it perfectly, and it's an out there eccentric performance, but it's masterful, and wow, it's just amazing. One of his best, actually, and the way that he's just very, very menacing, but also another character, like Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, who's also the funniest character in the film, and Ray Winstone, of course, is in this film as well. Always a lot of the time playing tough guys. He's amazing, and as well really, really funny. Just Scorsese always knows how to inject comedy into gangster films, and just just all of his films really, most of his films. In fact, I find sometimes the ones that I don't like too much are the ones that don't really have any humour in them. But that, I don't think that's why they're the worst ones. But usually he does, when he's at his best, he can master comedy and all these different genres and still be intense. And wow, this film really is intense. It just keeps getting more intense throughout the film. Which of course, as on paper, a film or a story should, it should always build and build really, and for the most part, if it's a, linear narrative, which this one pretty much is. But a lot of films obviously suffer in the final act at times. Just this is the way it is. But this one is probably at its best in its final third of the film for sure, and all the stakes are so high, and then the payoffs really something else. Not a film that is an ending you want to everyone's storyline, but it's a one that makes perfect sense, and it just is so well done that it's just amazing. And Martin Sheen, I've got to mention him in this film because he's such a great actor, and the performance is so good. This character is just so because he kind of oversees a lot of the operations with Leonardo DiCaprio's character Billy Costigan, and I think that the key thing is the warmth that Martin Sheen brings to the performance. Really, really just warm character, and I love how the relationship between him and Leonardo in the film, and that kind of thing that goes on with Mark Wahlberg as well. It's so good, and it's really, really funny at the same time. Mark Wahlberg is really amazing in this film, and just a great performance. I love all the performances in this film. Vera Farmiga, she's great, and I just love her role in the film and how that it just brings out the exposition of the characters, mainly Leonardo DiCaprio's character, in such a good, such a genius way, and just an emotional way. I think it really has a resonance, and that's it kind of just brings the humanity to the gangsters, and also to of course the police and the kind of undercover detectives and everything, and just does it all both. Just does it in every single way perfectly, and the mirror narrative that goes on the arcs is genius, and I think the shootouts in the film are something else as well. I think this is a masterpiece, an absolute masterpiece. And it just really, I just love the characters overall as well. As I've said, the soundtrack is wonderful. I think the editing is perfection, and the way that this story unfolds, how involving it is well. It's just something else. It was very, very hard for me to decide the rating, and I'll reveal it in a minute. But I would highly recommend this film, and it just I really don't feel it's overrated at all. It's just deserves all of the acclaim that it gets. It's very, very acclaimed on every site you really see. And many have called it the best since Goodfellas and all that. I will not reveal that, but until my ranking maybe. But I think it's an easy masterpiece, and it definitely gets into my 100% plus tiers. This film is thrilling from start to finish, and the way that it brings once again the heart to this kind of to this genre of gangster films and everything, and all these characters, and the way that Scorsese draws on a lot of classic films. It's really, really wonderful through the cinematography and everything as well. I think this actually slips into my 100% plus tier 2 rating. That's what it is, and very, very close. It wasn't an easy tier 2, but it has made it in there, and because I cared about the characters so much. I kind of was constantly thrilled by the film. It's one that's just so enjoyable. All the comedy, and everything just works so well. And I just love the visuals and the actual way that the story unfolds. It's as well. I love the scale of it. I love the scenes as well. The very brief scenes. At the academy, the training scenes, and also the bit where you see Matt Damon, his character is meant to be, when he's a kid, and all this kind of stuff, and the way that has that evolves, that sets in stone, the relationship that him and Frank Costello, have over the rest of the film, and it's just a thoroughly human film, very much very stylized as well at times, but just a masterpiece. Every element of filmmaking, top form, and I do think this is one of Scorsese's absolute best films I've seen. It's not as good as Goodfellas or anything, but it's definitely one of his best. It'll be very very high in my ranking. Because I think at the moment I've seen most of the top acclaimed Scorsese's. I've not seen The King of Comedy, and I've not seen After Hours or The Aviator. I think they're the ones that are more acclaimed than the others that I've not seen. So who knows? I really look forward to them, especially The King of Comedy. That's one I've really been meaning to see for so much time. But really, yeah, this one basically will be remaining very very high on my ranking, and I look forward to doing that ranking. I'll be doing the narrative films. I won't be doing the documentaries that he's done. But yeah, no, I just can't wait for that. And this is a masterpiece, easy masterpiece. One of the best films, among the best films of the 2000s, and really the century. It's one of the best thrillers that I've ever seen, and the way that it blends, this kind of this thriller, very very tight thriller, intense thriller, and full of loads of different twists with this kind of gangster film, but it just meshes perfectly. And as well, the way it brings out the humanity in these characters, and it's constantly engaged, constantly invested, and really quite moved a lot of the times at the end in parts. And I just love the warmth of it, the passion, and how thrilling it was. A masterpiece, tier 2 for sure. So yeah, thanks for watching my review of The Departed. Next up in terms of Scorsese, you could see The Wolf of Wall Street. Who's That Knocking on My Door? And maybe some of the ones I've not seen, like The King of Comedy. I really want to purchase that soon, so that could happen quite soon as well. Definitely this month. But yeah, thanks for watching my review of Martin Scorsese's absolute masterpiece, The Departed.